Hi, I'm Lizzie and this is Laura, and we are currently on board P&O's Iona, sailing a Norwegian Fjords itinerary. Today is day 5 and we will be visiting the port of Hellesylt.
If you don't want to miss everything that we get up to on the rest of this cruise and any of our future cruises, make sure you subscribe to our channel by hitting the button down below.
This morning we set our alarm for the very early time of 5:30, and this wasn't because we wanted to watch the sailing. It was because we were getting up to film part of the ship tour. It's always an interesting experience being around a ship that early in the morning. There were lots of staff around who were very pleasant and said good morning to us. There were a few other people around because the sail into Hellesylt is quite a beautiful sailing.
Our arrival time into Hellesylt was very early this morning to allow time for people to get the ferry into Geiranger. We docked at 7 a.m. and the deputy captain made an announcement to say the ship was cleared for disembarkation. He was quite amusing in his announcement this morning, but also made it very clear they did not recommend one of the activities that a lot of people do like to indulge in at this port. This is diving off sort of a high platform that is quite close to the port area in Hellesylt. The diving platform is 18 metres tall, and he did state that there have been some injuries from passengers from them jumping off this platform, and that there were lots of jellyfish in the water around that area.
We continued to walk around the ship and explore, and then we decided we were a little bit peckish, so we headed into the quays for breakfast at around 7:30 a.m. and we were surprised to see there were a reasonable amount of people around. However, it was very easy to get served and get a seat. I had an omelette and a bit of a hash brown and a sausage, and Laura had waffles and syrup and bacon.
We then headed back to bed for a little nap as we'd worked very hard this morning and we needed to wait for our parents to be ready, so thought we'd take the opportunity. Once Mum and Dad were up, we went up to the Crow's Nest for a drink. It's really nice that this venue is open early on this cruise, as we've noticed in the past that the Crow's Nest doesn't tend to open until sort of early evening. So it's an extra place that you can sit in during the day.
As we were late embarking the ship because of the traffic on the motorway and our late coach pickup time, we struggled to get a booking at the Olive Grove. Laura kept on checking and she managed to find one, which was at 12 o'clock today. The Olive Grove has always been a bit of a favourite of ours because it is the type of food that we really enjoy. We were pleased that we managed to get this booking.
When we arrived at the Olive Grove, there was a queue of passengers outside waiting to be seated. We did notice that there were a couple of people in the queue who didn't have a booking and they were not admitted into the venue. They were asked to wait to see if anything opened up, and it did look as though they weren't fortunate on this occasion to get a table.
Where we were sat in the restaurant, I could see the amount of people that kept on coming to ask if there were spaces in there, and they all got turned away. You could see they were trying to give people other times during the day, whether it be today or future days, but the Olive Grove is a really popular restaurant, so we highly recommend you get your booking done as soon as you get on the ship.
The main reason we enjoy the Olive Grove is one of the starters on the menu, which is the Mediterranean trio. This is a sharing starter for 2, so we had 2 between us on our table for 4, and we all really enjoyed this. I particularly enjoyed the calamari on this dish.
And I always really enjoy the halloumi.
For my main, I had something which I've never had in the Olive Grove before, and I ordered a pizza. It was a margherita pizza, and you can definitely tell it's better than the pizza available elsewhere on the ship. And then I finished my meal with the chocolate dessert. This chocolate cake used to be my favourite in the Olive Grove. However, the new version is not good at all. I believe it's a gluten-free dish, and it is possibly the hardest and driest piece of cake I've ever eaten in my life. It's always been a gluten-free dish, but I don't know what they've done to it to change it, but the new version is absolutely terrible.
For my main today, I had the piri piri chicken. I have eaten this previously and this was just as good. It was a really decent piece of chicken and there was a lot of rice with it, which I could not eat all of. For my dessert then, I just had some vanilla ice cream. Our dad had the Sicilian lemon tart for his dessert and he really, really enjoyed it. And I think that was probably the better option other than the chocolate cake.
We were in the olive grove for quite a while. They do normally advise you that all the food is cooked to order, so you will be in there for a little bit longer, but they didn't actually say that on this occasion. And to be honest, it seemed to take a while for it to get going. However, once the food started to come out, everything sort of ran quite quickly after that point.
As we had been to Hellesylt before, we knew that it wasn't a very big port to have a walk around. Most people use it as like the gateway to Garanga, but we think Hellesylt itself is a very pretty place. As we disembarked the ship, we took the path to go left because we knew that if you went down that way, you could get great views of the ship. We continued to walk along that road where you go past a football stadium, is probably a strong word, a little football ground. And then if you continue to walk, you will come to a river where they have lots of salmon in there. However, we haven't seen any salmon in it. And it does give you a bit of a warning to be respectful around there to the salmon and the fishermen.
We stayed around that area for a little while, again, just taking some photos and recorded some video and enjoying just how peaceful and calm it was there. It's a really nice spot and not as many people tend to head in that direction, so we definitely recommend it. In that area in particular, there's some great views of the ship where you can get sort of unobstructed views without getting things like the
camper vans.
Yeah, all of the camper vans in shot.
We then walked back along the road, so you're walking back towards the ship and then headed towards the waterfall. Because it was later in the afternoon, by now it was a lot quieter than it had been earlier in the day, because you can see from the ship how busy it is. Again, the waterfall is quite spectacular. The sound from it is quite incredible. So we stood around there for a little bit. The bridge can be a little bit ropey at times when vehicles are driving across, so you might have to breathe in, but they're driving past you to get to the ferry port, which is the next place that we walked to. The ferry terminal is probably a 10-minute, 15-minute walk from the ship. So if that is your plan for the day, to get the ferry to Garanga, it's really easy to get to. And from around that area, there are trips that you could get. And you can also see the diving board that the captain advised you not to use.
We noticed that there were definitely some people that hadn't heeded the deputy captain's warning this morning, and they were jumping off the diving platform into the water. They were certainly braver than we were, and I absolutely would not fancy it.
On our way back, we popped into a few of the souvenir shops just to have a look at what was on offer. It is pretty much the same as what is on offer in Stavanger and Oldham. You would just get a more personalised fridge magnet here.
On the way back to the ship, we noticed something that, again, we hadn't spotted before, which was a motorbike in a glass cabinet. This was Tom Cruise's bike, apparently, from one of the Mission Impossible films, when a stunt was performed in Hellesylt, and there is a little write-up next to it as well explaining all of the details of that.
As is becoming a bit of a cruise tradition, on this cruise we headed to the Keel and Cow to get the playing cards out. This time I absolutely stole the show, and I am recovering some of those points that I have not had on previous rounds.
Then it was time to head back to the room and get ready for the evening.
Once we were ready, we came to Mum and Dad's cabin to have a look out at the balcony views, and then we headed up to the Crow's Nest to have a pre-dinner drink. The views from the Crow's Nest were absolutely spectacular as we were sailing out of the fjords.
It was then time to head down to Sindhu. Unfortunately, this was basically the opposite end of the ship from where we were. So we jumped in the lift and headed across there, and we arrived to what looked like a very busy restaurant.
We checked in and then we were asked to wait, and we were quite worried at this point because we could see other people waiting. But straight away, then someone came to us and took us to our table.
We were seated in a really nice area of just 3 tables, and we had a window table, which was great.
We have eaten in Sindhu across the fleet, basically, and find that you get a totally different experience each time. So we were excited to see what the experience would be like today. We were surprised to see that on the menu there was an offer for all 3 courses for £22. We pre-booked our table in Sindhu, so we had paid a £10 deposit each already, and that then gives you 20% off your total cost. So we thought this looked like a real bargain. There was a disclaimer to the 3 courses for £22, and that was if you had either the lobster or the signature plate, there would be an extra £3 on top of it. So that would be 3 courses for £25.
Me and Dad both started with the same dish, which was the lamb cutlets. This was okay. The lamb itself was tasty. There wasn't really much flavour with the sauce. It was quite tomatoey and it didn't really have a sort of a curry type of flavour to it. But I did eat it all and would probably order it again.
And Mum and myself both had the same starter, which were the pan puris. They were absolutely delicious, and it was a challenge to try and see if we could pop the whole thing into our mouth like you're supposed to. Mum gave up and started cutting hers instead. For my main, I couldn't resist it. I had the lobster thermidor Sindhu style. I'm a great fan of lobster, and it's been quite a while since I've had it because you just can't seem to get it very often on cruise ships anymore. And when my lobster came out, at first I was a little bit disappointed because the table next to me, their lobsters look far bigger, but actually it was very sufficient and tasted really, really nice. Really enjoyed my main course.
And for my main, I couldn't decide what I wanted, so instead I went for the signature plate, which meant you got a small portion of 3 of the dishes. One of those was the lobster, one was the duck, and one was the beef dish. I probably would have predicted that the lobster would have been my favourite. However, I really enjoyed the duck dish and thought the sauce that came with that was very, very tasty.
Mum also had that same dish, so I got to try a bit of the duck and a bit of the beef too. So I basically had the signature platter, and I can confirm that the meat was very tasty on both of those dishes.
With the mains also, you do get served some breads, some vegetables, some dal, and some rice. We all sort of tried bits and bobs of all of it. I stayed away from the vegetables and the dal, but did enjoy the bread and the rice as a side to my meal.
When the waiter came over to take our order, he told us that everything would be cooked to order, and then we got some poppadoms on the table with 3 different dips. All of the dips were delicious, and we all struggled to decide which one we liked the best.
For dessert, it's been a while actually since I've had a dessert in Sindhu because they have been charging per item. There's not a massive amount of options that I really fancy on here, but as it would basically work out the same price to have the dessert, I decided to go for it. So had the chocolate dish, and despite the fact I didn't like almonds and it was coated in almonds, I did still enjoy eating it.
I am not a fan of desserts, and there is no way I could have eaten any of them. So I said that I didn't want one. The waiter then came back over after and said, you do know it will basically be the same price, don't you? Whether you have a dessert or not. I had to just say to him, I'm sorry, I just really don't like the desserts.
We all really enjoyed our meal in Sindhu, and we spoke to our parents after as well to find out what they thought. And they said that they could really tell it was an elevated experience from what you get in the main dining room, and it was well worth the extra spend.
Tonight in the theatre, Greatest Day is on. From our experience on Arvia, we knew that we needed to get there early to make sure we were all sat next to each other, because on Arvia we'd ended up in totally different sections in the theatre. So we went to Brody's, got ourselves a drink, and then joined the queue to get in. The theatre was later at opening than it had been on previous days, but we easily got a seat, the 4 of us together, and we sat drinking our drinks while waiting for the show to start.
Something that's worth noting is that on Iona on this occasion, they haven't been checking people into the theatre as diligently as we've noticed in the past. Often there might only be a member of staff at one of the 2 doors. So if you haven't booked, it's definitely worth heading down there and trying your luck. They did check us in on this occasion, and we assume that's because they knew that this particular performance was going to be busy.
For those of you that don't know, Greatest Days is a musical which contains Take That songs. It is not about Take That, but it is all their music. It is about a group of girls who really like a boy band. This is a shortened version of the musical, which has been on tour and in the West End. And we really, really enjoy it because it's different than all the other headliner shows in the sense of there is actually a proper storyline.
We won't give too much away about what happens in case you haven't seen it, but we definitely recommend taking some tissues along with you, as it does get quite emotional in parts.
Once we had finished in the theatre watching Greatest Days, we headed up to the Crow's Nest for a few drinks at the end of the night.
It was already quite quiet in there by the time we got up there, but it was a really nice, relaxing atmosphere, and we just sat in there until closing.
Again, we had another lovely day on board Iona today. We enjoyed our little wander around Hellesylt and particularly enjoyed our experience in Sindhu today. Tomorrow we are in our final port of this cruise, which is Hellesylt.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give this video a like and drop any questions you've got in the comments down below. Please also make sure that you're subscribed to our channel. You can also find us on social media by searching Sisters on the Seas.